Former Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel is known for his lifetime of service, most recently when he ran the Pentagon under President Obama. The Vietnam veteran is now speaking out about his time on the E-ring and on the current state of the world. Secretary Hagel recently sat down for an in-depth interview with Aaron Mehta and talked about how his tenure got off to a rough start during his confirmation hearing.
Well, it was a tough hearing, but hearings for big jobs should be intense. But I thought this got very personal when it didn't need to be. It was surprising to me.
While many assume that Chuck Hagel, a former Republican senator, would sail through the Senate, everything from comments on Israel and Palestine to his views on Iran became fair game during his confirmation.
Do you think the nation of Israel has committed war crimes?
No, I do not, Senator. I'd want to look at the full context of the interview, but to answer your question, no.
And looking back, the secretary wishes it hadn't gotten so contentious.
I know I was considered by some Republicans as a traitor, that I would go to work for Barack Obama. And I just regretted that it got so personal, which that did surprise me, and it bothered me.
Although he was eventually confirmed in a 58-41 vote, he didn't get much time to adjust before his first crisis.
In 2013, when I was Secretary of Defense, we went through a 16-day shutdown. It is really debilitating for the government. It's demoralizing for the people who serve this country in every way. It's wasteful, it's stupid, it's irresponsible, and nothing good can come out of that, and nothing good ever does. It was a very difficult time for us because this happened in October 2013, and we were right in the middle of our budget preparation process. And so it had a big impact on us, and this was on top of the sequestration that we didn't plan for, budget for, and 5 days after I became Secretary of Defense in 2013, I was confronted with another $50 billion cut that we didn't know where we would get the $50 billion cut, but we had to cut $50 billion.
His tenure was also marked by the Syrian civil war, in which President Obama's decision not to strike Syria after the Assad government used chemical weapons reportedly opened a rift between Hagel and the White House.
I think it was a mistake. I've said that. We wouldn't have had to kill volumes and volumes of people. There was a way to do some things to Assad's government. And that was the intent. That was the strategy. We had been looking at different options for months that the Joint Chiefs were putting together. And what I think we came up with, what the President ultimately decided on, was exactly the right thing. And with that, there would be a diplomatic message. You didn't know where that came from, Mr. Assad. You don't know when the next one's coming. And until you agree to get to the table and start negotiating, and certainly never again any chemical weapons, that's the way we're going to do it.
What happened instead was the U.S. and Russia collaborated to remove stocks of chemical weapons. But Hagel believes in reality, the U.S. handed in their cards on Syria.
What cards do we have? 2,000 people in northeastern Syria? To do what? The Russians are in there, they're not going anywhere. They're in big time. Assad gets stronger every day. The Iranians are in there, they're not going anywhere. So the question is, how's the United States going to influence the outcome in Syria? The Russians will, the Iranians will, the Turks will, and Assad will. And of course, remnants of ISIS are still there. Other al-Nusra, other smaller terrorist groups are still there. The freedom fighters are still there. But I don't know where the strategy is or what they think is going to be in this administration to be able to influence the outcome of Syria.
Hagel was also in office for the rise of ISIS in Syria and Iraq.
We were picking up intelligence on this, and we were giving this intelligence to the Turks, to the Iraqis. They were picking this up. But there wasn't a lot we could do about it. It wasn't our responsibility. We didn't have the people there. It wasn't our country. We had spent over $1 billion in Iraq training Iraqi forces, equipping, arming Iraqi forces to do their job. So in the spring of 2013, a small band of ISIS fighters crossed the border from Syria into Iraq. 2 divisions of Iraqi regular soldiers equipped by American tanks, with American tanks, most sophisticated heavy weapons, armored personnel carriers, everything. They drop their weapons and they run. 2 divisions in western Iraq. And of course, ISIS walks in, takes control of those Sunni cities. Then we have to come in a limited way because we couldn't go into Iraq without being invited in. We talked to the Iraqis. I talked to them. I was there. Our Central Command commander, Lloyd Austin, was there. But we could only do whatever the Iraqis asked us to do. They're a sovereign nation. Then eventually we started to do more in Iraq because the Iraqis invited us in. But we couldn't do anything until they did that. Now, we were giving them as much as we could give them in intelligence and so on. So that's where we are. At that time, during all that period, the ISIS forces were getting stronger, and the people who were leading them militarily were former Ba'athist officers under Saddam Hussein. It was a huge mistake we made there too, to disband the Ba'athist Party and the Iraqi military. Huge mistake to do that. So they left, and they hated the United States, these Ba'athist officers.
But even through those crises, Hagel says he enjoyed his time as secretary, but not the micromanagement of the National Security Council, which he feels was one of the reasons for him leaving.
I think you want an NSC that's not near as big as it is now, first of all. And I think you want a focused NSC on the big issues, what it used to be. That's how it started out. But I think the NSC has gotten way too wide, and it's gotten involved in way too many things that it doesn't need to be in, that certainly the Department of Defense, Department of State, Homeland Security, Justice, or intelligence agencies can take care of that. That's their purview. Take the big things, the big strategic things, where the military and everybody has to come in under a strategic decision, a policy decision that's made only by, and can be made only by the president.
Reporting from Washington for Defense News Weekly, I'm Jeff Martin.